Hi everyone, I'm George Leon
I'm Lauda Leon
of Sovereign Key Productions, and today we've wanted to bring up a few important topics, especially in light of recent events. First of all, let's just discuss the recent eclipse, which in our locality it was at 80% totality. So we went out to do some work to negate the effects, because we don't see this eclipse as a positive omen. Just as the sun is a life giver, we see the moon representative of the life taker in its harvesting mechanism and its role that it has to play in that. So we saw any observable motion of the sun being eclipsed as a negative aspect of the celestial mechanics. So we were out there that morning and doing our bit to counter and to make our own declarations against the effects which certain powers and principalities have intended with this celestial event. And it is worth noting that the last time that there was a solar eclipse across America, it was the same year where the Spanish flu emerged. So it is very disconcerting to hear of reports of NASA sending experimental balloons up into the stratosphere containing bacteria. So when you read reports of that, it is very disconcerting. And so we just did our bit.
The Spanish flu was also it was a manufactured virus that was vaccinated into the soldiers. So when we went out to this event, I captured photographs, and at the time I didn't know what I was capturing because I wasn't looking at the eclipse. I was just hitting the camera, and that whole morning was very strange because there was a very odd silence.
Oh yeah.
And it was a very just an abnormal, unnatural silence that is stranger than strange. There was also something very interesting because there was realizing that, number one, there was no eclipse where we were. It was too minor because there was another light. There was another sun, quote. It wasn't a sun. It was like a artificial. It was like an artificial sun that was huge, and it was brilliantly lighting the sky. And I took pictures of it because you can see the quote artificial sun is a lot larger than the actual eclipse. And I felt that this event was a synthetic event, and it was an upgrade to the server, that it was this object that seemed like a sun. It was huge, massive. It was very bright, but yet at the same time there was no heat. There wasn't a heat coming off of it, so there was no heat sensation. It was all very synthetic feeling. And then we had a smell that were coming because the chemtrails were extreme. They were chemtrailing like crazy. We've never seen anything like it. Yeah,
bombarding in every direction.
We could actually feel the sensation of what they were literally filtering the sky with these nanos and all of this artificial metallic substance and something else that you could actually breathe.
In the lungs, we could feel it.
And you could smell it. And my tongue and my mouth and my throat and my lungs, I started going numbish and feeling like constricted. It was like I was being poisoned. I felt that it was a poisoning. And the smell was unlike anything I'd ever smelled. Now, we know what chemtrails are because they do them all the time, but this was different. This was entirely different. So we were countering the effects the artificial mechanizations of whatever this upgrade to the server is for this next more sophisticated version of reality, which is reality. It's a REELITY, real, like a film reel. I think it's
that's, I guess, the digital nature, the digital holographic nature of this reality.
Exactly.
So the architects can come in and deliver their upgrades to their simulation.
And I think also this is in tangent with the consciousness expansion that is happening throughout the world, where suddenly a lot of the population is able to grasp things that they were never able to grasp before. This acceleration in consciousness is, I feel, allowing the mechanics of this machine to upgrade. Essentially, the quantum machine, the quantum computer, is able to then be upgraded. So the question is this acceleration in consciousness something natural, or is it something also that is technologically corralled and geared? Is it engineered? Is all of this engineered? Is it all a part of how the technology works, which I feel a part of it is?
Well, seeing as the body is like a biological creation.
It's their technology.
Exactly. So how the brain can be harnessed, how they can manipulate all the electrochemical sensations in the brain. And this is why we always emphasize the spirit, because the body has been heavily manipulated by interdimensional forces, forces on the quantum levels, and the multi-dimensional levels. So this is something where we have to continually focus on what we own, and that is our own spirit.
Yeah.
And that is the control that we have, which is completely outside their manipulative realm. And we can bridge that if we choose to. And this is really the whole reason why we are doing this work and trying to expand awareness of the traps and all the myriad of lies which they keep perpetuating upon the people, and
trapping people within the law. The nature of their technology, including the physicality, is programmed like a computer, and the hardware is programmed just like a computer. The system that they have put in place in terms of, the spelling, the language, the maritime law, this entire system is based on corrupting the codes so that your spirit can't transmute and transform what we are meant to in the physicality. So they have done things to intervene and stop and intercept what naturally would be occurring with the spirit to body connection in the marriage. So everything that is happening is really to put a divide between that, between your spirit and
and evolution.
Yeah. Because what we're capable of doing is unlimited, and it's spirit to body. Therefore, they know that our mind is what makes manifest reality. Knowing that, they know that we have the capacity to literally create health within our own physicality, because it's our universe. So they have created an entire system around corrupting those codes, and that link, that communication, that connection.
Well, that's right, because we are here in the physical, so obviously what happens in the physical does matter, and this is why they go to such lengths to deplete the body of nutrients. This is why we have GMOs, and all these lengths, the contamination of the water, of the food, the soil, the air.
Why plastic is so popular.
Yeah.
Plastic is one of the things that they know on a base level that literally goes into our RNA and corrupts the code
and alters
it. So they know that glass is good for our crystalline nature.
Yeah.
It's good for our essence, and it doesn't cause any kind of interception.
Back to what we were saying about the eclipse and it being a harbinger of change, which obviously the negative powers are trying to harness towards that end. And the reason I wanted to bring up the pandemic of 1918, its correlation with this great American eclipse, there are two parallels I found in regard to, and I feel these elements are connected. Now, any serious researcher will know that the way these powers and principalities and their agents operate is that they always, as part of their sorcery, they have to reveal what their intentions are before they transpire. Mm-hmm. And I'm speaking in reference to the movie 12 Monkeys, which was released in 1995, and that the whole theme around that movie was based around a great pandemic, which was deliberately engineered, and how the main character had to go back in time, ironically, to the First World War, which also was when the Spanish flu was. So interesting enough, there's a parallel here, and what I'm getting at is the parallel with the Denver airport mural, which was also opened and unveiled in 1995, the same year. And that whole mural centers around war and pestilence. So, and of course, the dedication plaque put in by the Freemasons. We know that they're working on a timer where we feel that we don't really want a date set or anything like that, but we can just say that it's getting really, really close now to what the Bible would refer to as the beginning of sorrows, which is the tribulation period. We're getting really close, and yeah, you've been nudged to start preparing as well with food and water storage.
Yeah. I've never been nudged before. In fact, it was never even on my mind, even though I've been shown all this from the get-go, but I was also shown that the time and the moment that it would come out naturally for me to be starting to prepare, that it would be something to take note of. And so yeah, I would recommend that people start putting that into effect.
Yeah.
There is some importance to, like we said, we don't want to put any dates down on anything, and this isn't to take away the power within us in what the work is that we are doing. This is the agenda that has been in operation from the beginning, and it hasn't ceased, and it won't stop. There have been certain things elements that have been introduced as X factors, like Trump. However, I feel that
he's not an X factor, honey.
However, I feel that is not an X factor in the end. I feel that that is a part of the whole plan.
Yeah. Can I just interject for a second? Mm-hmm. Now that you brought up Trump, it just reminded me what I wanted to mention with the Denver Murals. Okay, on the Denver Murals, if you study them, you will see a depiction of a young boy who is of German descent. Now, this boy just happens to be wearing a red tie. Okay, so what is alarming about that is that this boy of a German lineage wearing a red tie just happens to parallel with Donald Trump being of German lineage and descendancy and wearing a red tie at his inauguration.
And the boy looks identical.
Well, yeah, he's like the Aryan-looking boy. Yes, he looks just like Baron Trump. Now, these people aren't stupid. They know they have to put it out there, but they're not going to put a picture of Trump out there, 20 years before.
Yeah, it's for us to figure it out. So essentially, it's the last war to put into effect their totalitarian state, the totalitarian global state. When I was in Denver, Colorado, interestingly enough, at the airport, there was only the one time I was at that airport, and I started checking out the murals, and I was just looking at them. So within about 15 to 20 minutes of me looking at the murals, I was approached by 2 police officers, and both of them took me by the arms and escorted me, gave me a choice. They said, you can either go to a coffee shop or the bar, or we will take you to where your plane is going to be, your gate. So you get a choice, but we're going to be with you the entire time, and you're not going to be able to walk anywhere. And that was out of the blue. I found it really interesting because they never told me what the problem was. I was looking at the murals like anybody else, but I was, I was just looking at the murals. There was nothing to cause any kind of alarm. They refused to tell me anything. They basically said that the only thing that they would tell me was my choice was where to sit out the rest of my stay until the plane came, which was about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
So they sat with me the entire time.
Well, I mean, why do you feel that occurred?
Well, I feel that occurred because things like that have happened to me throughout my life a lot. There's been heavy monitoring. I feel that they didn't want me to make certain connections. They didn't want me, somehow they knew who I was. Somebody there knew who I was. And they didn't want me investigating anything. And I feel as though I would...
remote viewing?
Yeah, exactly.
Well. Yeah.
So...
that's what I think it was.
Yeah. They didn't want me, penetrating into any of their...
well, the whole underground base, which is...
And which case I was starting to, because I had found a door which was very peculiar to me, and it was down below where the metro is as well. And I knew that was an access point,
mm-hmm.
and that whole thing was a falsity, like that metro that was going through. So, I think that they were trying to stop me.
Oh, yeah, and
they also told me not to come back, by the way. So,
just
not to come back there.
Really let it sink in.
So, they really don't want anybody connecting any of the dots. That region, also, they know that region tectonically is very sound.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason why they chose it, in terms of when everything is going to be, moved. that is going to be a sound area.
And apparently the runway there, from an aerial view, depicts a swastika, and there's several examples of that around the world, and this is just another one. So just to give you an idea that the Nazi movement never disappeared. They just changed their mode of operations and went from overt to covert operations.
And the war, the so-called war we won, that was a ploy by the Nazis. It was
always orchestrated by them.
Yeah.
So like we say, this is all a game of chess, and people choose to be the pawns. But
which is the Atlantic.
On that note as well, speaking about pawns, because this is absolutely vital. Part of the reason we've given our testimony and disclosures on cloning and replication technologies is because not everyone around you, and this is a really dicey area to go into, and a part of me didn't even want to go there. Not everyone here is real. Okay, and when I say not real, I mean that they can be akin to biological robots and programmed as such with a hive mind, and not as closely connected, well, maybe not connected at all to a spirit. However, they have been implanted with a programmed consciousness replicating technology.
With sentient cognitive abilities. So for all intents and purposes, you would have a hard time knowing who is who.
Well, it's some of the most advanced technology there is here on this planet, is to create that, because this is really the work of the gods. Okay, so and the idea of who these gods are, for the most part, they are highly invisible. For the most part, more invisible than the Draco.
Well, in the Draco, if you want to talk about who really is in charge, in terms of this whole operation and the internal fighting, the gods fighting themselves and each other, because it's a dominance, a dominion, a demon-inion. You can start looking at, there's different factions that have been co-opting technology and creating, quote, different species of humans. So the technology relegated to these different factions, these different demiurgic factions, mantid factions, they have their own hand in creating their own specific species of, quote, human, which is reflected in a lot of their DNA, and is also one of the reasons why there's so many different types of people on the planet. This is really a profoundly interesting thing, along with the different blood types. So the science behind DNA and blood is one of the most secret technologies, and I find it really peculiar that that's one of the hardest things to find information about when you try. There's very, very limited information. There was one scientist who came out apparently on the web, and he was talking about DNA and blood and how it was connected. You could see that it was connected to, God particles, I guess you could call it, or the God codes, other influences, not human. He was shut down. Nobody ever heard from him after that. Nobody could even prove who he was, or if what he said was real. This is also, when I was in university, I had a friend of mine who was a PhD of DNA sciences, blood, and he confided in me and said that, if you only knew, if you could only imagine what we know, there's no way that we will let any of you know anything about the depth of knowledge that they have about all of this. They already know all this. It's not out there. It used to be once upon a time that you could know what your blood type was, and they put it on your driver's license, and that stopped because they didn't want people knowing their blood type. My blood type's been changed. I haven't gone into the full story about my black alien goo blood. It wasn't blood, it was black alien goo. Prior to this happening, I was O negative. I wasn't allowed to find out what my blood type was for years and years and years until just recently, which surfaced as O positive. They can change your blood easily.
Yeah, so we wouldn't really get too hung up on the whole blood type thing and whether you're an O negative and the rest is negative or positive. And again, because I had a question about that not that long ago, and that's how I answered it. I'm like, well, look, mind over matter. Mm-hmm. Really, that's where it's at. And when I say mind, I mean the spiritual conscious mind over matter, because that can transmute all everything of what is pertaining to your physical evolution. So this is where the focus has to be. And even when we speak about all these catastrophes and their nefarious plans, we have to highlight primarily spiritual preparation ahead of all. Okay. Now the reason we bring up preparing for food and water is because there's a whole series of things planned, and the way we look at it is, hey, well, people spend thousands of dollars on insuring their car and their home, so why not insure your life? And you can rotate your food stocks. It's not money going down the drain or anything like that. You can rotate your food stocks, but most importantly, water. Okay, survive weeks and weeks and weeks without food. Water is a different story. Water is the essence of life. We're mostly made up of it here in the physical, and yeah, I would be investing in water filtration systems and
purification.
Yeah, water purification means, and
just start being as much prepared as possible for solar technology, solar radio, solar flashlights.
Yeah, because there are going to be electromagnetic disturbances. There are also going to be deliberate EMPs, EMP bombs, which will disrupt the grid. That's all part of their plans as well. There is so much happening. It's hard to know how to cover it all and to disseminate all this knowledge and information to you, because there's just so much going on many levels. I just want to say this. The reason I brought up the depiction of the little boy on the wall, because he is the herald of war. Okay, that figure is representative of what is going to be bringing war to the lands. So it is no accident, guys, that when Trump came in very, very soon after, this whole rhetoric of beating the war drums, regarding North Korea, just amplified. This has long been planned, and they have the people who are not spirited people here, who will join the armies, who will comply with the orders, who will function according to their program. And things have been delayed, but they will not be averted. Take from that what you will. I'm not trying to be a doom and gloomer, but forewarned is forearmed. Okay, even China, just last year, 2016, China unveiled a war statue, and they call it the God of War, but it's really depicting one of their generals who they revere as a god, a military general. They unveiled that last year. Okay, so this is all in the works, guys, and they always reveal via their symbols. Okay, so
Trump is representative of the 666, and this is what I was shown. I was shown, and I will be getting into what I was shown prior to my incarnation, because it was revealed to me this series of events that would happen right from the beginning to the end. Specifically, and specific characters, specific places, events, all the way up until the end, and I will be getting into that in detail. Now, Trump represents the 666 carbon reality. Interestingly enough, I was shown also that Obama would return. There would be a black president afterwards, so he would go back in. He would already be a president prior to all of this. But Obama represents the 777, new upgrade reality system. And where Trump is representing and bringing in the actual war.
The Trump card.
That
no one saw coming, right?
The president that will be put in place after Trump, which I did see that the black president would be effective, and he would be in effect, as I saw him in a huge auditorium giving a speech that he would be returning, basically, in power. And it would be some strange technicality that had never happened before. But essentially at that point in time, there would be a lot of technicalities that have never happened before. It would be just a domino effect of things happening for the first time. And that would be the real, when that happens, that would be when the really serious stuff will come into effect, more so.
There are other seers who have seen Trump being killed or assassinated, or taken out in some way. When you factor in the cloning technologies and the replicants, it is very easy to stage events and stage assassinations. And we can also apply that even to the biblical prophecy, where they say that the Antichrist figure is going to come back to life after an assassination. Hey, you know how easy that is with cloning technology?
Yeah.
Child's play. Okay? But it is the time now to be revealing that these technologies exist, because again, it is for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. okay? And really, those are the spiritual perception.
Well, in the Bible is
To
their
say-
creation,
Yeah,
this
well,
whole tribulation, Armageddon, this whole World War III. It's all there.
the mind magic mechanisms,
Yeah.
and the sorcery, spellcrafting.
The other thing that locks people into the system of corruption and inversion is that because of the mind magic, the words that are created in the languages that we speak are created in such a way it's locking you into that spell, and that's where people get sick. That's where people accept the illness. That's where people literally lock in the programming of death, the carbon programs that seem to actually manifest physically onto destruction. So it's a theft of life through legality. Actually,
You've said that it is all going according to how you were shown it.
yeah, all of it, everything.
And the one who sent you here, when he showed you all these things, he said, I don't make mistakes. And guys, I will speak for myself, but I feel I can speak for both of us when I say that we would not have incarnated here if these events weren't going to transpire. There wouldn't have been a need for it.
Well, actually, and I will say that in my experience prior to being born, where I was in particular, there were 8 of us there, and 8 of us came together in a most huge, colossal way. We're talking 8 of us were and are from different universes. We only did so because there was no other alternative. There was absolutely no alternative. This was what had to be done, but it was by far not anything we wanted to do. And in fact, we were hopeful that things would transition enough so that it would be able to happen consciously via people's evolution, but it didn't. And so these measures, this last measure had to be taken because there wasn't an alternative left. And it was one of the most difficult things, if not the most difficult thing that I ever recall when I came in, because it was very terrifying knowing what I was shown and knowing exactly everything that would transpire. And that doesn't mean that this isn't about people finally reaching their capacity as eternal, unlimited beings. It actually has everything to do with that. It isn't about the complete and utter destruction, even though the dissolution of illusions has to happen. And the refining, the great refining of the universe is the great fire that must happen to literally purge and cleanse and rebalance harmonically everything. So it isn't to take away the potential for the marriage that has to happen. It is actually because of that, and because certain measures need to be taken in order to push that potential to the very max of its potentiality to exist in that marriage between spirit and body, and to undo the false and, you know, step into the true creation, which would require not just the dismantling of illusions, but also a new paradigm of existence, which would be the second earth, which would be the true place where evolution actually can take place without the hijacking. So in memory, coming in, there was a huge fear because we knew that we could potentially lose our spirit, that we could potentially lose ourselves inside this prison, inside this containment system, this eternity system, carbon-based eternity systems that we have in the inverted realities, which means that you're just like go from deeper, 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 and you just keep getting lost. There was a huge fear with that. And that was one of the reasons why I was able to keep my consciousness, and that in fact it was vital that I keep my consciousness and that it would not be swiped, because if not, it's very difficult to do the work on account of the nature of this entire corrupt inversion, theft of your own DNA, your own consciousness, your own everything. So then realizing when I came in that everything was, even through my entire life since I was born, everything was going exactly as I was shown. There wasn't a single thing that is off. Not one. There are a few things that have been not revealed to me, obviously, because I'm not going to be shown every single thing in existence, but everything is exactly.
And what should be a cause of concern is that we've already been brought to our safe zone, where we are now. So
if you have a nudging,
so if that certainly is an indicator to us of where we are at in the timeline. And I can only hope that it serves as an indicator to those who this message is meant to reach, even if it's for the few.
That isn't to say that there were not other other people and beings that have come in for this purpose as well, because I do know and I do feel that many of us have converged here for this great work that is about to transpire. So in particular to my experience, I can speak about the 8 of us, but I'm sure there are a lot of other waves of that have come in prior to that and after. So it is a colossal work that is in parts, because no one person can hold all one part, because if so, it would be too easy to steal it, hijack it. So I feel that in many ways this is done in such a way that everybody is carrying a certain precious payload, and that payload is in conjunction with other payloads, and so when you unite, those two essentially act as an unlocking that also unlocks on higher levels other things, and so it works in this way to protect the greater work at hand in this all.
Well, we realize as well that in the midst of these tribulations, which will be intensifying, because that's how it's going to work, it's going to be like building up to a crescendo, there will be communities formed of the spirited, because there is going to be a great divide taking place between those who fall away and those who step into their power and their potential, and who converge also with spirit and integrate their spirit.
And those who integrate the spirit, from what I was shown, we're going to be manifesting those abilities that were innately and always have been in us, and that have been purposefully suppressed through technology and purposefully put in dormancy, if not removed, because this is where the DNA codes were screwed with, where you have like parts of your DNA that have been removed and inserted with other things that they wanted instead. So this work that is going to be happening between the spirit and the body will be the re-emergence of what we truly are in all of that eternal, unlimited kinetic ability of electromagnetism that we are. We're going to be able to do amazing things. A lot of the sci-fi fantasy movies that are being made are actually being made because of us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because recently we went to see The Dark Tower, and we were just speaking recently on how they're revealing so many of these technologies and of course their plans, but they actually showed the trip chairs and how the children are actually used as the stargates, to bring to actually activate the stargates in order to travel to other dimensions. And that is not science fiction one iota, and we can say that because we are those children.
Yeah. Which also brings me to what I was shown, where one of the quantum computers that is being run, remember I was telling you about, that is in Australia?
Yes.
Where this is, yeah, I caution people with what I'm about to tell you, because it's no light thing. It's horrifying. I was shown that this quantum machine, which is the helm of the beast, that's what they call it, the helm of the beast. It's largely generated through the consciousness of these psychic children whose heads have been removed from their bodies and kept alive and attached to machines. This is why their technology is psi technology, is psi interface technology, just like the G5, G6, G7, G10, G unlimited. It's like a quanta machine, because it is based on sentient consciousness that has the capacity to not just absorb consciousness and grow, but it can literally change and manifest physicality. So, and alter time, alter reality, and they can keep them alive perpetually.
Well, I guess in bringing this whole topic up, I guess if we're going to make a bold statement such as us being time operatives, which not only has been endorsed by Orteles, but has psychics. They picked that up on me. I know that you're an operative. The fact that we are, well, I'll just speak on my own behalf, because I'm a current operative, that means that I'm still highly compartmentalized. I do have memories of being in a jump room. It was a room that was all metallic. I was holding in my hand a metal chip, probably about the size of a standard SD card, and there was no markings or engravings on it, and I knew how to use this device. I mean, in this memory, it was old hat to me. I knew exactly what to do, and I inserted this metal into a slot, and then what that did is it actually activated the walls, and they started like that in a sequence, in a circular sequence. But everything in that room was metal and fairly solid state, not like a computer panel or anything like that. It kind of reminded me of footage that I've seen of the Gravitron. I don't know if you know the old amusement ride. Yeah, well, the amusement ride called the Gravitron, and when I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of akin to that in a sense. So yeah, that's I'm not sure if anyone's quite described it like that before.
Well, and often time jumpers are also artifact retrievers. So there's a connection between those who work in these time rooms with these artifacts that have been hidden since ancient times and in the future, and the return to certain aspects of technology which they really want to incorporate into the current technology because of the efficacy of their dimensional portals. So there's a lot of the wars actually are to retrieve some of these artifacts. One of the dreams I had when I was young, which takes...
It's not a dream.
Well, it's not a dream, no. One of the
account.
things, one of the accounts that I experienced when I was young, and this is when I was really quite young, was that, and this takes us back to the original history of the real history and not the contrived false history. I was taken to Egypt, and I was taken to the pyramid of Giza, and once I got there, I actually met up with a boy who was about 12 years old, and he was waiting for me. And Tim and I were the two that actually had to go through a particular corridor of the pyramid that was inaccessible. The other people couldn't access this part. It was specific to your DNA, it was specific to a frequency, and somehow this boy and I were the ones that had this, and they knew it, and they set up for both of us to meet it in front of the pyramid. And the boy and I went through, and we knew exactly where these hidden chambers and how to access them. We knew exactly where we were going in the pyramid, and when we got to certain walls, we knew exactly where to touch, and a door would open that wasn't even viewable. You couldn't even tell it was even there. And when we got to the chamber that we were looking to find, and we knew exactly where this was buried, it was the books of time, the books of history, the books of the past, the present, and the future. These books were written in copper, silver, and gold. And each book they were large, and each one of them pertained to either the past, the present, or the future. So the interesting thing was that the gold book was the future, the copper was the past, and the silver was the present. And within these books was a living technology. So how these books were written using the metal, so each metal and the language within the metal housed the living history, and they were living fire letters, I guess you could say. So it was a living technology. And we were able to retrieve them from where they were buried beneath a sarcophagus, which was moved. And we knew exactly everything we were doing. We accessed the books and we carried them out. Now, at the time that I had this experience, the boy was 12 and I was in my 20s, so early 20s. When we got out of the pyramid, and what I find interesting, because this goes back to the two creation stories as well, which we want to get into a little bit, because there are two creation stories in Genesis, and the books that we retrieved basically had all of that information. It had everything. It had the real information. When we got out of the pyramid, this strangest, very upsetting thing occurred where a group of men that looked like these rabbis, like Jewish...
Rabbis or rabbis?
Rabbis, but no, the ancient ones, like the...
Sanhedrin.
They look like, yeah, I mean, I had to research this after the fact because of the garb that they were wearing, and the hats that they were wearing, and I knew that they were Jewish. I knew that they were like an ancient order of Jesuits, an old order. They were waiting outside of the entrance of the pyramid, waiting for the boy and I, and it was a group of them who would basically, they are the keepers of all of this information, and they don't want this information out, and they forced us to give them the books, which was really disturbing to me because there was military, so there wasn't really any option that we had. There was no one we could go to. We couldn't protect the books.
Because they had their military.
They had their military,
Okay.
and their military was connected to the American military, because in the experience I had, it was an American military that took me there to the Egyptian pyramids. Okay. So they were complicit with this ancient Sanhedrin order.
Okay. So you were basically operating as trackers.
Yeah.
So they could then
only we
use
didn't
you
know
to retrieve it,
right?
And then take possession.
But we didn't know that until, that happened
after the fact. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was this is how I found out what I was doing, because I was being used for these operations to find these artifacts, because they know that I know where some of these are. And when this ancient order, I mean, they look like they came from thousands of years ago. But
Predating Christ?
Yeah, well, yeah, predating, absolutely. And in fact, they had helicopters there, they had everything there. So literally, they took the books. They told us that we were not to try and find them. They told us that we were not. They basically threatened us, and threatened our lives, and threatened everybody in our families if we were try and retrieve those books again. And they said it particularly to me, because they said, you're the one that
could
yeah
relocate it,
and you're not to do that. And they big time threatened me. They went into their personal jet, and they were escorted by helicopters, military helicopters. And the thing was, their jet was right outside the pyramid. It was like close by. So this whole thing was, I mean, they can do anything whenever they want to.
They're above the law.
So now these books, they had
not universal law.
They had the real story, and I hate saying history, his story. I mean, this is it's another spelling word.
Patriarchal.
It's another patriarchal,
manipulation.
So, for all intents and purposes, let's just call it, let's call it
recordings of time.
The recordings of time. Yeah. So in the recordings of time, it was pre this civilization. So one of the books pertained to the previous civilization. And somehow I knew what was in the books.
Okay.
So consciously, I had some ability. It was like it was a connecting to whatever the living technology of these books were.
Living word.
Of the living word. And I knew it. And the previous civilization was destroyed. Now, this takes us, and they were destroyed because basically their ability to overcome all of the hijacking was they were very evolved, highly spirited, but in the body, which is what they wanted to stop. They wanted to stop that evolution from happening, which is what we were discussing about Babel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in the first story of creation in Genesis, it's about this other civilization which was destroyed. Although it doesn't say really why, but that's why, because they were too.
Well, they were at an apex of their evolution.
Of their evolution. So they were literally the manifestation of spirit to body, and they were able to transmute everything at a high rate. So all of these demiurgic powers, all of these, the lords,
couldn't have that.
Time, Chronos, all of it, couldn't have it. So that civilization was wiped out, and they wanted to create a more dummy down version.
Yep. And this is why when you read in the accounts of the Bible of the Lord saying, again, right, in the plural, saying, let us come down, and Elohim, guys, this is a pantheon, it's a single God. So if you actually read the Bible and study it, the idea of confounding the language and scattering the people was all about altering the DNA, and then
everything else,
relocating the people, which I'm sure would have been done through a series of disasters, again, and them coming down in their crafts, because this is all about these lords of advanced technology which could do that. So, it's when you dig deeper and deeper, and it really does open up a whole new understanding of what is operating here. And these powers and principalities are going to show themselves on certain levels again during these catastrophes, and it is going to involve part of the alien, what they call the alien crafts, that whole UFO setup, which many researchers and whistleblowers are still promoting. And again, be very, very careful. And I've given parts of my testimony, you've given parts of yours. There is a great deception coming, and most of the world, they say, is going to fall for it. So,
and this whole, I mean, it's important to note that this this language dispersal, where everyone suddenly couldn't understand each other, and that's what it says.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how would that happen in any logical sense? Like, oh, hang on, we all speak one language, and suddenly we can't understand each other? No, you got to, like, look through the metaphors.
It's all DNA.
That.
And and the corruption of the code means that basically they were corrupting, quote, your God code. I mean, I don't like the word God either, but they were corrupting your God code genetically so that you couldn't reach the stars. It's what's happening now.
Yep.
And this is the Atlantean agenda. It's the Atlantean Nazi agenda. It's the same thing.
Cycling, repeating itself.
So they don't want you to reach your godhood. Your godhood.
The personal ascension. So, and on that note of space,
water.
Let's just say this: NASA, your university, and educational institutions have been lying to you about the size of the sun, the distance of the sun, the moon. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you have woken up that yes, the moon is an artificial construct. I can say what I've been shown. That moon is going to come really low during the Star Wars. People realize that it's actually can be, just
driven.
like, yeah, exactly right. The aerial shot you see of a satellite above the stratosphere, well above the stratosphere. Okay, this is where they have a lot of these satellites. This is where there's a lot of crafts that are cloaked. When you see objects coming from the sun, that's because the sun is a stargate, the sun is a portal. That's part of its designation, is to be a portal. People think that, oh, these ships which are photographed, or what looks like ships, and when they're photographed with the sun in the background, oh, this ship must be like the size of the Earth. Again, no. It's because the size of the sun is not what you've been taught. Okay, so yeah, these ships, in comparison, it's a lot smaller because the sun is a lot smaller than what you've been taught to believe, be the live Eve.
And this
serpent's lies.
This reality system is based on mechanizations. It's actually based on just technology.
Celestial gears.
And just as I was shown what the harvester looks like, and it has a bunch of wheels and a bunch of the gears from the old technology clocks. This is much like the technology that is utilized for this realm. We're in a realm. It's not, it isn't what people think. It's not.
And the brain has been designed to perceive according to how the designers want you to perceive the matrix. So this whole debate about, is the Earth round? Is it flat? Hey, it's neither. So don't get too caught up in that and waste a whole bunch of energy.
And until we're able to return to our true perception outside of time and outside of all of these artificial constructs, we're just going to be perceiving and having to battle through perception as per the nature of the technology, aka us, and this realm. So a lot of that is just to consume your energy and to derail you from the real work that needs to be done.
Well, this is why we keep discussing that everything that is put out in the media is always to get you to choose a side and to debate and argue over an allotted side. So, okay, we're going to tell you that it's flat and it's round. Now, go battle.
Yeah,
right?
It's the duality.
This is exactly, and look, we are in a realm where there is a law of opposition in all things. This is why, whatever, day, night, hot, cold, bittersweet.
Yeah.
This is how it is by design here.
Although information is helpful, there has to be a recognition that there can't be an obsession for information either. That is the Ouroboros, by the way. That is the trap, because you will always be led into the next thing, but you won't ever get anywhere. You're basically eating your own tail in a very Alice in Wonderland, go through the rabbit hole reality of inverted worlds. So a lot of what everybody is experiencing in even their consciousness is really designed to eventually get them to the place where, like we were speaking about, they can start to disengage from all stories, all narratives, disengage from all information, disengage from all of this. Just disengage. Because this all is a trap. Information is a trap. If it enhances you so that you can disengage and therefore internally return to your power base and your foundation so that you can begin to truly step into what that authority and power is and that sovereignty, then that's great. But if you find yourself continually just chasing information...
Well, the way I see it is that deep down, even children possess within them the most profound truths, what they need to get them to graduate, so to speak, from this realm. Obviously, it's what the true words of Isa, the Christ, did, espoused. Okay, love one another. Do unto others as you will have them done to you. Okay, it's a lot of this is common sense stuff, but yet when you look at the world today, it seems that, well, for one, common sense isn't so common, and secondly, people don't seem to love their neighbour in many ways, and people have just lost sight of where their priorities should be.
Well, and a lot of this has to be a return to just pure life and living. So not all of the other stuff that consumes you. It's the basics. It's returning to the basics of compassion, but not enabling. Okay, there's a big difference between empowering and enabling.
Yeah. And by the way, we did mention in a previous video that we wanted to provide some productive
helps.
Advice, especially regarding recognizing setups, from basically, our youth and our infancy to adulthood. So we've drawn up a working sheet, and we're just gonna sort of fine tune that a little bit and do a presentation on that. And again, it's just to help us recognize the setups and then establishing our boundaries, which is all part of protecting our sacred boundaries and our sacred space and our sovereignty and applying our power so that others don't run our lives for us and dictate terms to us, whether it be parents, whether it be governments, whatever, all these mechanisms of, ETs, so to speak, or aliens, and being at the mercy of their will.
So as to be able to navigate through this in a much more successful way, where people are not feeling as victimized, and that they can start stepping into their ability to transmute everything. Because although these events that have been slated to happen from thousands of years ago in this great plan, we still can transmute the energy around us in our own reality. In order to navigate through this reality, so that regardless of where the agenda began, whether it's the demiurge, the mantid, whether it's the reptilian, the drac, the gods, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. So the point of this is to return you to the point where you can begin to transmute your personal reality, your personal life, both internally and externally. And step into your power, step into your manifestation. And
just to wrap it up, I just want to close off with an account of him mentioning that we've been placed here at our personal safe zone, and I say that in a relative sense because that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be potential struggle, because it's going to be difficult everywhere. Hence why we've been nudged to prepare with the basics, such as food and water, stocks, lanterns, things like that, just the essentials. I want to give an account of an experience that I had over a decade ago, which at the time I thought it was a dream, but given our involvement in these time projects, and given the fact that we have a benevolent family which is overseeing us and knew everything that we were going to face in opposition here, and in the ways that we would have to endure terrible things in attempted hijacking and whatnot. I was shown a field, and this scene was unfamiliar to me at the time, and it was eerily deserted, this field, and it seemed like there was some buildings in the distance which felt like it was a school, and the impression that I had in this short scene is that it was a time of war, and a significant war, and enough that people would have been displaced, except I knew that the war was being fought overseas, but it was a major war, and that it had gone nuclear. And when I say nuclear, I will divert just for a moment, because we have both been shown specifics in that, and I just want to say that because the hour is late, I don't want to mollycoddle too much, even on certain details. They will be deploying low-yield tactical nuclear weapons at the earlier stages. And at the point in this scene that I was showing where I knew that there had been war that had gone nuclear, it was on that level. They will be closing borders during that time. I was shown celestial signs in the skies that will be appearing. Some will call it the Planet X system. I was shown that. Though we also have to be careful with what the Bible refers to as the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, because holographic technology will be also deployed, which is a precursor to the Antichrist kingdom being set up, because they are to artificially induce their kingdom before the real dissolution and before the kingdom, the true kingdom, come. So, but what I was getting at, back to this account, so I was shown this field and this scene, and I was walking through this eerie landscape, and I didn't recognize it at the time until now, because this scene is literally across the road from where we live now. So guys, the time is getting closer, and we're giving these messages out as an alert and foremost spiritual preparation before anything. The flesh can pass away, but the spirit, if you tend to that and you hold that path sacred, the spiritual path, which the material will fall away in many ways. So if your priority is collecting money or houses, cars, if that's your priority and your focus, then hey, this message probably won't resonate with you anyway. But if it does on some level, focus on what matters.
Live in the now also. Don't these messages are not so that people live in fear and live in the future to be robbed by the present. Live in the present, enjoy everything. You can actually truly begin to have a really amazing time transmuting energy around you, because it is it's spectacular to do this. It's spectacular when you realize that everything is a frequency and an energy, and all of these events that are contrived, they're all engineered artificially. So none of them are truly real. They're real, but they're not real. So
yeah, beyond the illusion.
You know, there's a balance between again, right, the information and just what you bring into your sphere,
your personal universe.
So
because that's where you can alter time and space.
And through your vibration and through what you choose to give life to. You know, don't entertain the things that are imprisoning you. You can do the preparation, you can do all of the things that I'm doing, that we're doing, with a light heart, and it isn't that it's affecting you negatively. It's just, you just are prompted, you do it, that's it, and you enjoy enjoy everything. You remember your power is in the mind, body, spirit connection. That it's a brilliant opportunity in the universe, and you are the universe. So this is something that is profoundly amazing.
A friendly fella.
And
you want to be on
and
TV.
just like that, is
Exactly.
amazing. See,
Yep.
this is what it's about.
There you go. Little synchronicities like that, I love them.
Yes.
You know.
And with that,
Yeah, and actually one last thing. For those who, because a lot of people are making money out of this whole prep thing, okay? The most vital resource is food and water, okay? There are many preppers which are gathering their gold and their silver, and you know what? That's going to work for a time, okay? But without saying too much, let's just say what the Bible says. The silver will be scattered in the street.
worthless.
And the gold will be taken. Okay? So, it's happened before. Don't think that they're not going to confiscate again, because they will.
They will.
All right?
And in fact, a lot of what they're going to be doing with the gold and making it cheaper to buy is because they really want to collect as much as possible. So.
Well, it's not cheap right now, but usually what happens is they create the dips.
Yeah.
And then right after the dip, it shoots up rapidly.
Exactly.
And then that was the whole orchestration plan. And that's the thing.
So just do a little research. You know, do what you feel prompted to do with a light heart. Remember to enjoy every moment. That everything is energy, and you are energy, and everything is a frequency, and what we create are all frequencies. So you choose which frequency you want to create, because that's what's going to manifest.
Yep, and that's the whole thing. I mean, we're not going overboard even with the prepping side of things, because we also realize that we know inherently that we have a guidance with us from the benevolence
and
side.
Maybe start doing some exercises with your kinetic abilities. Start doing exercises with energy. Start exercising that muscle.
How?
Well, there are many things that you can do. You can use a candle to begin with and see if you can move the flame. You can see if you can actually start moving something like styrofoam is really good to work with.
You like my flame, honey?
And there's a whole lot you can do. Iodide, potassium iodide is really good actually for you. And there's just certain things that are here to try and stop the glands, the psychic glands, from operating, which is the pituitary gland and the pineal. So there's certain things that you can do to actually help you along and start exercising those muscles, and so you can become accustomed to using your abilities in energy, because everything is energy. We're going to be realizing that in the future with all of these things that are about to happen, and I'm going to get into this more later, is that we're going to be creating these energy weapons, energy shields, and we are doing that now, but
yeah,
we're going to be creating that, and that we're going to go into that. I'm going to go into what I've been shown with regards to that later. I'm going to also discuss further about the metal god and those living technologies that are associated with the metal god, and what I've been shown there with everything that's happening as well. So this is
going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But ultimately nothing to fear, because we are more than the flesh anyway. So we're not to be married to material world or the flesh, but
we are to do the work in the flesh.
Exactly, but our role within that.
And that is where the work has to come.
Pertaining to spirit.
We will end with this. It's we will end with this.
Is he going to give it up?
We will end.
He's like, no, you ain't getting it.
The work has to be done in the body. So the spiritual work that we're really doing has to be done through this medium in that great becoming. So it isn't, and it can't be done once you've expired. And mind you, expiration is a false construct. Death is a false construct. Disease is a false construct. None of these things truly, genuinely exist. Our DNA is meant to regenerate consistently all the time. So,
for those that can unlock.
Exactly. And we will be walking in that more so when we're, when
more meta.
Yeah, when we're more meta, which is where we're going. So
because this is how it works. Everything has to be maintained within this duality realm. Everything has to be maintained in a form of balance. So if they, for example, if the negatives up their agenda to an extreme, then it is allowed for us to then have our beneficial protections enabled. And that's what's going to happen for the many who have chosen to remain conscious against all the forces and the weapons formed against our estate, our spiritual estate.
Life is beautiful.
You got to say it like Roberto Benigni.
Life is beautiful. Remember, be yourself. And life is beautiful.
Yes, and you're beautiful.
Remember.